What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some of my final thoughts ahead of the Game Week 15 deadline. So I'm going to go through a bit of team news we've got, talk about captaincy, even though it's pointless. We've got a free hit draft, benching headaches. Then I'm going to answer some of your questions and talk through my team as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with the team news, and we'll go with Arsenal first. Mikel Arteta was asked about Declan Rice's availability, and he said, let's see later today if he's fit. We have another training session later. So that does sound quite positive. It's not like he's been ruled out or anything. And it's worth saying after the game, he was asked in an interview about how he was because he came off and he said he's fine. Now, we've seen in the past players saying they're fine and then they miss the next game. So it's not a complete, it's possible he might miss the Villa game, but I would say it's unlikely. I think he will start. I wouldn't necessarily buy him this week, but if you've got him in your squad, I think he'll probably be okay. Mosquera's got an ankle problem. He's having a test today on Friday, so we don't yet know how long he may or may not be out for. But it does mean Nketiah's minutes look pretty good right now. So if there's no Mosquera, if Saliba's still a doubt, no Gabriel, Nketiah's got to play. And it might actually mean Ben White at right back and Timber centre back potentially. So either way, Timber is starting, hopefully as a full back, but it could be as a centre back. On Saliba and Trossard, he said it's a matter of days, which is exactly what he said before the Brentford game as well. So it's obviously not long term, but if you're a Saliba owner, I cannot guarantee you he's going to play in that Villa game. I think he probably will. I think if you're going to rest a player, it's against Brentford at home rather than Villa away. But again, can't guarantee it. But because they've got Wolves at home in 16, my preference would still be to hold Saliba if you can. But also, we got 5 free transfers next week. So if you wanted to play it absolutely safe, you could do Saliba to someone else and then maybe back to a different Arsenal defender or Saliba in Game Week 16. You can play it however you want. I think it's okay to hold Saliba for now. Liverpool, Bradley should be back in the squad. I don't think he'll necessarily start, but obviously that could happen soon. And Gomez, who's been playing right back the last couple of games, has a knock that he's managing, which isn't that much of a surprise. Doesn't really affect FPL. I don't think Bradley being back suddenly going to make Arsenal a lot better or worse. Sorry, not Arsenal, Liverpool. I think it will just kind of be the same. Neither of them are options anytime soon in FPL. For Brighton, Matoma's had a setback is a doubt. And then Simas, I've definitely pronounced that wrong. Tsimzas, who started up front, I think, against Villa and actually played quite well, is out for months, which is not ideal. Hopefully he comes back and does really well. It does mean that Welbeck's minutes are probably a little bit better, but it's worth saying when he did go off against Villa, Welbeck didn't come on. So they're still going to manage him when needed. So I think the next time we have a midweek fixture, Welbeck's probably going to be an issue again. But for this week against West Ham, I'm almost certain that he will start. So if you've got him, absolutely play him. And then for City, Pep was asked about Nico O'Reilly needing a rest. He said he's so young, recovers well, we'll see. And then he also went on to say that the only reason Aït-Nouri hasn't been playing is because of how well O'Reilly's been doing. So if you're an O'Reilly owner, I guess you've got to start him this week and just hope for the best. There is a chance he doesn't start. And if he doesn't start, he could absolutely come on. But it's a pretty good fixture. He's so attacking. If you've taken the risk to put him in your squad, I feel like you've got to play him. Unless you've got 3 other great defenders, I would probably take that risk. But there is no guarantee. He may well get a rest before Real Madrid midweek. But as Pep said, he's young. He can recover. Maybe he just plays both games. So just to cover off some of the other teams, and there doesn't really seem to be a huge amount of key team news this week, which I guess is a good thing overall. For Burnley, Chuanzebe is out for a couple of weeks. I suspect that his ownership is not that high from people watching this video, but he was mentioned a few times recently because he was so cheap before Esteve dropped to 3.9. If you've got him, he's not going to be that usable for you anytime soon. For Everton, Michael Keane, David Moyes says not sure he's going to be right. So there is a pretty good chance he's going to miss Forest at home. The fixtures for Everton do get better 18 onwards, but in 16 and 17 it's like Chelsea and Arsenal, so it's not ideal. I think Keane is quite sellable if you've got a spare transfer. You can always come back to him, but as always, it's perfectly fine if you want to keep him on the bench for a few weeks as well. For Brentford, Keith Andrews confirmed that Thiago's in a good place. We know he went off with a bit of an injury in Game Week 13, or at least that's what it looked like. Then it kind of seemed pretty positive, but then he was benched against Arsenal. So maybe some speculation there about whether he's fully okay. The manager doesn't seem to be that worried. He played 30 minutes against Arsenal. He'll be fine moving forward. He's a pretty good option. And then for Villa, Martinez will be assessed. So he was in the lineup for Game Week 14, and then pulled out of the team during the warm-up. I doubt there's many Martinez owners out there. Villa's fixtures are pretty horrible. So if you've got a spare transfer and you own him, he is a doubt. I'd probably get rid to someone else like Verbruggen maybe. I'm not even sure who else I would look at. Maybe Sanchez at Chelsea. They're the two kind of players under 5 million I quite like. Ramsdale short term, obviously, until Pope is back. Also an option as well. So let's discuss captaincy for game week 15. And if you're listening on podcast, you're really missing out. I've put together a graphic to try and determine who might be the best option this week. And basically, it's Haaland against Sunderland at home. And it's going to be exactly the same in game week 17 against West Ham at home. Maybe, if you're feeling brave, you could go against him in game week 16. But this week feels like not the week to do that. And I know there'll still be some people that will say, should I take a punt on this player, that player, etc.? By all means, if you want to take a punt, go for Foden or Voltemada or Gordon or Mbeumo or Fernandes or someone like that. But the absolute best captain by a mile this week is Haaland. And that is as simple as that. So let's talk about a free hit draft for game week 15. And I feel like I've almost got to apologise for the free hit draft that I came up with for game week 14 because it was awful. Salah, Saka, Timber, I think they were all in there, didn't start. No Haaland, no Foden. Although, to be fair, I think leaving Foden out was probably an okay decision. It was Strand Larsen up front. I'm not sure what I was thinking there. Although, to be fair, as I was talking through the draft, I did say I'd probably switch Gakpo to a cheaper midfielder and then Strand Larsen up to someone like Voltemada. And on the deadline stream, I did say I probably wouldn't be able to go without Haaland. So, in the end, it probably would have been okay. But the initial draft was bad. Hopefully, this game week 15 one is better. The key teams to think about really are Newcastle and Man City. Burnley at home and Sunderland at home. You're going to triple up. It's just about which triple up to go for. For Man City, two of the picks are super easy. Foden and Haaland. Everyone's going to go for them as they should. The third one is probably a defensive option. I've gone for Donnarumma in goal only because there's slight doubts about Nico O'Reilly starting. If I had to make a prediction, I think O'Reilly will start. But I can't guarantee it enough to put him on a free hit draft. That's why I've gone for Donnarumma. You could go for Vardio instead. So I've got Donnarumma and Van Heck. It could be Verbruggen and Vardio, or a different goalkeeper altogether and Vardio, something like that. But ultimately, I didn't feel confident enough to put O'Reilly in. Haaland and Foden were super easy. The Newcastle triple up, there's a lot of options. Ramsdale's nice and cheap in goal. Although I really don't think money's going to be an issue for this free hit 15. Lewis Hall in defence. If you want to go safer for a defender, it's probably Chow and Dan Burn. But Lewis Hall started the last 3 games. They're so much better when he's in the team. And he is their most attacking defender. Now, obviously, DEFCONs are a big thing this season. But for 1 week only, I like going for the more attacking player. So I've put in my triple up for Newcastle. Lewis Hall, Anthony Gordon, and then Nick Voltemada. Voltemada's pretty much a definite. I mean, there is a chance maybe he gets rotated. Gordon plays through the middle or something like that, but I suspect Voltemada will start again. Gordon's missed the last 2, so I would expect him to come in, and he's obviously on penalties as well. And then I've already talked about Lewis Hall. There is some risk there, but on free hit, you can maybe take a little bit of risk. Like if you wanted to play it super safe, you probably just put Bruno Guimaraes in, who was benched last game, so almost certainly starts this one. And I think that's fine. But if they all start, Hall, Gordon and Voltemada looks pretty good. I've still kept Fernandes despite the awful performance from Man United overall against West Ham. Fernandes still probably came closest outside of the actual goal to getting a return. You know he's going to start. He's on penalties, etc. I've also gone for Mbeumo. I think because he's blanked so much recently, people will be against that. But it wasn't that long ago everyone was treating him as essential. So the numbers over the season are still pretty good. Man United can be inconsistent, but Wolves will hopefully help with that, although West Ham didn't help all that much because Man United was still terrible. I think I would go for Mbeumo. You know he's going to start. And that is quite nice after a midweek game week. And then I've gone for Welbeck up front because I think he'll come back in rather than someone like Minte. And my other defender is Tarkowski. Pretty decent for DEFCONs. Not bad goal threat. Forest at home is a good fixture. On the bench, I didn't really think about it too much. I just put Van Dijk and Dalot. Dalot's actually a little bit of a risk this week, so you could just switch to someone else. But I'm pretty confident all those 11 players will either start or come on. And yeah, I think it looks pretty good. I mean, maybe the answer is just to go for Munoz instead of Van Heck. In fact, to be honest, Munoz should probably be on the bench instead of Van Dijk, actually, at the very minimum. but maybe he should just go into the team. Otherwise, I don't think there's too many other players that I'd even be considering, like an Arsenal player maybe, but I think this is another week where you can go against their defence, especially with the injury problems they've got. And Saka's quite expensive. But again, I do have a lot of money on the bench. If you wanted to go Saka instead of Mbeumo and drop Van Dijk down to a really cheap defender, that could work as well. In fact, again, as I talk through this, sometimes I change my mind. Saka in for Mbeumo, especially because Saka got rested midweek, and Van Dijk down to a 4 million defender, that's probably what I would do. So I quite like Saka. Munoz, obviously, I already mentioned. I don't think there's too many others. I can Jai against Forest. He's fine, but he's not that interesting, I would say, this week. That's about it, I think. I mean, the main focus is going to be Man United, Newcastle, Man City, basically, and Brighton as well. So just take your pick from those teams. So let's go through some benching headaches for game week 15. And I was just thinking, maybe this is the worst part of any video that I have to do every week, because every time I look through the list, I always think, I don't know if that's quite right. I don't know if that's exactly where I would put that player. And I want to sit here and just say it's a really close decision. But obviously it's close. That's why it's a headache. That's why you're asking me. So I want to give more reason than that. But my God, every week it's just so difficult to get it exactly right. So this is what I've got for game week 15. As always, it's quite close. If you disagree, go with your gut instinct. At the top, I've gone Mateta and then Thiago. I think Mateta's minutes have obviously taken a hit right now, but they'd probably be a little bit better against Fulham. I don't necessarily see a 60-minute sub in that game, and generally he does get more chances from open play than Thiago. Part of the reason Thiago's done so well is because of the sheer amount of penalties. I would back Mateta in a game that's quite similar, which makes it even worse to potentially sell Mateta, as I'll talk about later on. So Mateta, then Thiago, then Minte. Minte's got the best fixture of the three, but the other two are on penalties. That's why they're ahead, as always. Then I've gone for Chow quite high up. Like, Burnley at home is just such a nice fixture. It's almost a guaranteed clean sheet. Obviously, nothing's guaranteed in football, but it's about the best shot you're going to have other than playing Wolves. Then I've gone for Sharda against Spurs away. So a little bit further down than Thiago, purely because of slight minutes concerns. I mean, I think he'll definitely start. I've got no real worries about that. Or he should start anyway. But he could get subbed early. No penalties either. Then I've got Enzo Fernandez against Bournemouth away. Now, he might become a slightly worse option going forward if Palmer gets regular minutes because he'll lose penalties. But his open play numbers this season have not been bad, even if he's playing a little bit deeper. And then I've gone for Reinders. Now, Reinders is probably the biggest headache on this list because I don't know if he'll start. Like, I look at it in one way and think, well, he started the last two. Maybe he's just played himself back into the team. But there's no way Pep plays exactly the same team that he did against Fulham as he will against Sunderland. There will have to be some changes. And so part of me thinks surely it's Reinders. But then is he definitely going to play against Real Madrid? I don't know. If not, maybe he plays Sunderland. Like, I hate players like this because it's so difficult to know. That's why he's not further up the list. Like, after him, I've got Rice and then Anderson. That's Elliot Anderson. Honestly, if you had that choice between Reinders and Rice, I mean, Rice is obviously a bit of an injury doubt, but I think he'll be fine. You want to play it safe, you just bench Reinders. Simple as that. But I still see Sunderland at home as not a bad fixture for Man City. It's not as good as like Leeds, it's not as good as West Ham, Burnley, etc. But it's not terrible either. So I feel like if I had Reinders, I feel like I would have to play him. This is the problem with owning players like this. I'm going to keep him above Rice and Anderson, but you know the deal. If you want to play it ultra safe, you go for the nail guys. Simple as that. Then I've gone for Lacroix ahead of Dewsbury Hall. I'm actually recording the bench and headache section after I've talked about my team. And when I talked about my team, I had this discussion about who to play. I think because Dewsbury Hall is playing a bit deeper at the moment, I'd maybe put Lacroix just about ahead because he's very good for DEFCONs. He's got his own goal threat as well. And there is a chance of a clean sheet against Fulham. Not maybe a great one because it's away from home, but there's potential there. So again, I don't think there's a right or wrong, but I'm leaning more towards playing Lacroix over Dewsbury Hall. But don't be completely shocked if I get to the deadline tomorrow and I just play the attacker instead, because generally that's a bit more fun, although less so with DEFCONs. And then Chalobah at the bottom, Bournemouth away. That was probably the easiest part of this whole list, I would say. So let's get into some of your questions. Do I lose my banked free transfers with the new additional 5 added after the deadline? If I have 2 free transfers right now, will I still only have 5 after the deadline, or will I have 7? Basically, everybody is going to have 5 free transfers in game week 16. No more, no less. Everybody will have 5, no matter how many you roll into game week 16. So I've got 1 free transfer this week. I'm going to use it. And then in game week 16, I will have 5. If you've got 2 free transfers and you roll them, in game week 16, you will also have 5. So that's all you need to know. Everybody in the whole game will have 5 free transfers, no matter what, in game week 16. No more, no less. Therefore, if you've got moves this week, you should use them. Now, some of you might have a completely perfect team where making a transfer is actually a downgrade, and maybe in that situation you can burn them. For most people, that's probably not the case. And at the very minimum, you can take like a short-term punt. So I'm considering Mateta to Thiago. If I didn't really want to do that this week, but I had nothing else to do, I could do like Mateta to Voltemada for Burnley at home and then bring Thiago in for game week 16. It depends how you want to play. I think it's perfectly fine to go aggressive and take a short-term punt. You could also make a transfer that saves you 1 down the line. So there is a high chance I want to do Mateta to Thiago in 16 anyway. So I could just bring that forward a week and spend 1 of my 5 free transfers on something else next week. Just to clarify, when you get those 5 transfers in game week 16, they don't all have to be used straight away. You can carry them through chip. So if you wildcard in 16, you'll still have 5 free transfers in 17. Same if you free hit in 16, by the way. And they don't only have to be used on AFCON players. So for example, if I get to game week 16 with 5 transfers, use 1, I'll still have 5 in 17 because I would have rolled 4 of them. Hopefully that makes sense. All you need to know, as I've said before, 5 free transfers in game week 16 for everyone. No more, no less. So would you sell Saka to Foden if you're using your free hit chip in game week 16? This is one of those dilemmas where I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. So all I can do is give you an argument from both sides and then you can make the decision. So on one hand, I quite like this move because you get Foden for Sunderland, you get Saka back for Wolves at home, which is the best fixture Arsenal have in the next 3 game weeks. And then you've still got Foden for West Ham at home. Not only that, but you're freeing up some money as well, which will almost certainly come in useful. It's always nice to have a bit of money in the bank if it's not detrimental to your team overall. And when I look at Saka as an option, once you get past that Wolves at home game, the fixture run's not terrible for Arsenal by any means, but there's no real fixtures there that stand out as amazing captaincy option. Like 17 is Everton away. Everyone's going to captain Haaland against West Ham at home. 18 is Brighton at home. And then Villa at home in 19. So 18, 19, where he's got 2 home games. Haaland's got Forest away, Sunderland away. Now you could argue maybe Saka is competitive because he's at home, but everyone's going to go for Haaland pretty much. So Saka loses a little bit of value because the idea of captaining him after Wolves at home, I just don't really see a fixture for quite a while where I'll be that interested in it unless Haaland was to go and get injured. So the reason it's a good move, you free up some money, you get the perfect fixture run, Sunderland at home, Wolves at home, West Ham at home, and Saka long-term's probably not a great captain. That being said, reasons to keep Saka, he's really low owned relative to what we know he can deliver. Like he's on penalties, Foden's not. His minutes are probably, I don't know, I feel a bit weird saying Saka's minutes are better than Foden because Foden's not been benched since game week 4. Saka literally got benched last week. So I actually don't think it's fair to say that right now. Over the long term, I would expect Saka to play more minutes, but in the short term, I'm not actually sure that's going to be true. So Saka's got penalties, his underlying numbers are slightly better, minutes probably similar-ish, but also he's a nice price point to get to Palmer. Because you might not want Palmer right now, and we'll talk about that later on, but soon you might. And Saka being 10.1, Palmer 10.3, it might be easier to make that move with someone like Saka in your team. Now, it's also worth saying, and this is why FPL is weird at the moment, we've got 5 free transfers coming up. It's probably not going to be that difficult to get Palmer no matter who's in your team eventually. But that is one small favour in Saka's, like one thing that benefits you from keeping Saka. And like I said, the ownership is quite low, whereas Foden's ownership's only going one way. So, I don't know. I think my gut feeling is this is a pretty good move, specifically if you're on free hit 16. But I'm also slightly biased because I might sell Saka in 17 for Foden. And that would free up some money to make some other moves as well. So, as much as I like Saka and I like how low his ownership is, and as long as he keeps starting, he's not a bad long-term hold. I am also considering selling him myself in 17. So, I think my gut feeling says this is a pretty good move, but it's not a no-brainer. If someone was looking at that saying, I'm just going to keep Saka and still free hit 16, I also think that's fine, honestly. So speaking of Cole Palmer, we did get a couple of questions about him. What are your thoughts on going early on Cole Palmer? Personally, I'm not considering it whatsoever at the moment because I just don't trust the minutes for 10.3 million. Now, he didn't start against Arsenal, didn't start against Leeds either. I think the main reason he didn't start against Leeds is because he didn't get off the bench at all against Arsenal because they were down to 10 men. So I do think he'll probably start against Bournemouth, and he is a huge differential. Like, his overall ownership is 9.6%, but actually it's probably a lot lower than that from FPL managers that are engaged with the game, because there would have been a lot of people that had him at the start and have just stopped playing. So super low own, probably does start against Bournemouth. How many minutes is he going to get? We just don't know what level of fitness he's at right now. Will it be 60, 70, 80, 90? You've probably got to assume it's going to be much lower than 90. And if he plays against Bournemouth, would he definitely play against Everton as well when they've got Champions League midweek? And if he does, will it be another benching? One thing I think we've learned from Maresca, he won't take risks with players if they need to miss out. He did also say a couple of weeks ago that Palmer is their main man. I'm paraphrasing a lot, but that's basically what he said. He's their Salah, etc., Saka, whoever. So he's going to want him in the team. I think we all know that. It's just about how soon can he go to playing 75 to 80 minutes plus every single game week. We just don't know. And so for that reason, I wouldn't go early. And also, what makes it a bit easier is it's Newcastle away in 17. I mean, if Palmer plays 90 minutes in that game, of course he could do really well. But it's not a fixture I go out of my way to target either. So I'm kind of happy to wait. Obviously, if he smashes it against Bournemouth, he'll become a bandwagon with 5 free transfers, Everton at home, and his price could go up. But I'm hopeful that it's not going to absolutely skyrocket. And personally, if my route to Palmer is Saka, I'm not going to sell Saka before Wolves at home. So I think I'm going to leave him until after Newcastle away. At that point, maybe I'll think about him. Villa at home, Bournemouth at home, 18, 19, not bad. Although in 20, they do run into Man City away. Longer term, by the way, just while we're talking about Palmer quickly, the fixtures for Chelsea around game week 20 or 21 are kind of ridiculous. Okay, maybe not 21, that's Fulham away, although look what Haaland did and Foden last week. But 22, you've got Brentford at home, Palace away, West Ham at home, Wolves away, Leeds at home, Burnley at home. That is a ridiculous fixture run. Now, some of you will remember last year when Palmer went off the boil and then had a good fixture run. A lot of us kept him, he did awful. I'm ready to go back and try again for that fixture run. So maybe kind of 18. So for me, basically, now is too soon for my play style. I'm just not confident enough in the minutes. I'll reassess it game week 18 probably. And obviously stuff could happen in the meantime. Saka goes and gets an injury. Maybe there's more reasons to take a punt on Palmer if I've got everyone else that I'm kind of wanting. But 18 is the next time I'll assess it. And if I don't go 18, I guess I'm leaving him until after City away. So maybe 21, 22 onwards. And at that point, you're past Christmas, you're into January. And if he's not proved his fitness at that point, maybe he's never going to. So, yeah, I get it. I personally think it's too much money to take a risk on someone you're just not sure what level of fitness he's at right now. So what are your thoughts generally on Crystal Palace players? They have a tight schedule and we're already seeing signs of fatigue. Is it time to move them on? I do think the amount of fixtures Palace have got this season will eventually catch up with them. They're not used to it. There's not much rotation. There's not much squad depth either. That's probably not going to be ideal over the course of a whole season. I guess my issue, or not issue, but what I'm not sure about right now is whether there is fatigue there or there is tiredness. Because what people will do, because they know they've got lots of fixtures, every time something doesn't go quite right for Crystal Palace, or every time a player has a bit of an off game, it will just get labelled as fatigue. And people that say that might be right. But it's just an easy thing to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, when they played Liverpool and I watched that game, they were amazing in the first half, not so good in the second. Well, that's because they're tired. Or did Liverpool just play better? I don't know. I'm not a tactico, even though I watched that game. Maybe it was tiredness. Maybe Liverpool just came back into it. How many times have you heard the saying it's a game of two halves, right? They played Everton. They were great in the first half, not so good in the second. Was it just all tiredness or were Everton just better? Like, I don't know. When I think about it as a general thought, I mean, I can't imagine Munoz owners are sat there right now thinking, Christ, that guy looks knackered. 14-pointer last week, 14-pointer in game week 12. Like, it doesn't feel like so much of an issue for Munoz. Maybe it's an issue for Mateta, because he's been subbed off twice in the last 3 game weeks early. Or maybe that would have happened anyway because Nketiah's back now. Maybe it's not a fatigue tiredness thing. Maybe it's just general rotation. I don't know whether the fatigue thing is actually, like, when you say we're already seeing signs of fatigue, what are those things? Is it because they haven't beat Burnley like 3-4, 5-0? Or is it just because Mateta's getting subbed early? Like, I'm pretty happy with Lacroix. I suspect Richard's owners are fine. I think Minoz's owners are on cloud 9 right now. So is it just Mateta that we're worried about? And if so, I think it's okay to move. Like, generally, I think it's okay to move Palace players on if you want to, because it's an away game against Fulham, then it's a home game against City. It's not ideal. And then even when they play Leeds, it's another away game. So I'm not sure how many clean sheets I see there. But again, as a Lacroix owner, I know he'll play all those games. I know he's good for DEFCONs. Munoz owners are thinking, well, if he loses the clean sheet, he can go and get me a goal or an assist. For the defenders, I don't see it as a massive problem. For Mateta, I've kind of already spoken this week. I think he's okay to sell. I don't think he's a must sell. I think he'll still start the majority of games. And by the way, he's not been benched yet this season. Thiago has. I actually think Mateta's played more minutes than Thiago so far this season. So again, are we looking for an excuse to sell him? And by the way, I think it's perfectly fine to do Mateta to Thiago because of the fixtures Brentford have got coming up and it saves you money. But I can't help but feel the fatigue tiredness thing, we're almost looking for excuses. And by the way, it's okay to do that. If you want to take a bet that Palace will struggle over the next few games because of the amount of games, that's okay. You can do that. I'm just saying I'm not so sure if it's a definite reason to sell them. I don't know what the signs of fatigue are in footballers. Like, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know why it's just reminding me of that, but I feel like I used to watch Harry Kane a lot. I used to always look knackered, then play the whole 90 minutes and usually score 2 or 3 goals. Yeah, look, Mateta's a problem because of Nketiah, more so than tiredness and fatigue, I think. The defenders are probably okay to keep, especially if you can rotate them around some of the more difficult fixtures. Who knows? Maybe I'll be sat here in a couple of games thinking, no, you're right, they're absolutely knackered. But I think they've done okay, right? They beat Burnley. They lost to Man United, which I don't think people were expecting. Wolves, they won. They beat Brentford recently. They drew against Brighton. Fair enough, these things happen. I think they've been doing okay, generally. If you want to keep them, it's fine. But again, we got 5 free transfers. You can do whatever you want. If you want to sell the defenders, then come back to them. Do that. Like, I look at Lacroix. So I'm going on a bit of a ramble about Palace now. Lacroix in my team, that's exactly how I'm looking at him. If I need to sell him soon, that's fine. But I'm also kind of okay. Like, if I look at that fixture on 15 to 22, if I've got to play Lacroix against Fulham, Leeds away, Spurs at home, Fulham at home, Villa at home, Sunderland away, so 6 of the next 8, I'm okay with that. And for me, that makes him an okay FPL pick to keep hold of if I need to. So is Eze a must sell with Odegaard back now? I wouldn't say must sell because he didn't start against Brentford, therefore he's very likely to start against Villa in game week 15. So if you've got other stuff to deal with, it's perfectly reasonable just to play Eze. And then you can decide on his minutes against Wolves at home based on what happens midweek. So let's say he starts against Villa, benched in Champions League. There's a good chance he'll start against Wolves, and therefore he's a nice pick. What I would say with Eze, I definitely would not buy him now. Because with Odegaard back, the minutes take a dip, no matter what. Even if he starts against Villa and Odegaard doesn't, that's a switch that Arteta will almost certainly make in the second half. Game state depending. If they're chasing the game, he might want both of them on the pitch. But if they're comfortable and they've got a lead, it might just be Eze to Odegaard. So his minutes take a dip, therefore I wouldn't buy him. And unless they get more injuries in that team, I just don't see him as a good long-term pick. So he's one that maybe you start selling 16, 17, but I don't think you've got to rush into it because he'll probably start against Villa away. So with only Wildcard left, would you play it in game week 16, set your team up nicely and save 5 free transfers for as long as possible, plus catch price rises, or save it until game week 19? Now, because we've had a couple of game weeks in quick succession, I've not looked in depth about what a wildcard 16 team would look like versus a wildcard 19. But my gut feeling is it won't be that dissimilar. There's always going to be some differences the later you wildcard, right? Of course there will be, but I don't think it'll be massive. So if I was building a wildcard right now for 16 and 19, I don't think there'd be too much difference. Therefore, I think the better play is to play it in 16. I'm not completely sure about that, but I think it's the best possible chance of saving transfers long term. It could be, by the way, that you get to 17, 18 with massive issues and have to use all your transfers. Obviously, that is something that could happen. But my gut instinct is playing it in 16 and then making a maximum of 1 transfer a week for a few weeks gives you the better chance of having 5 transfers longer term. rather than getting to 16 using 2 or 3, then trying to roll and then wildcarding later on. I could be wrong on that. All I would say, if your team doesn't need it in 16, it's perfectly reasonable just to wait until it does. But the idea of catching price rises does sound quite nice. There's going to be a lot of transfers in game week 16. And if you still want most of those players by game week 19, I guess what's the use in waiting? There's just the problem with answering questions about chips at the moment. There's no real fixture swings coming up. Like Newcastle, great game this week against Burnley at home, not bad against Sunderland away next week. They play Burnley again in game week 19. But the fixture run they've got outside of the 2 Burnley games is not amazing, right? It's not worth necessarily wildcarding on its own. You know, when Mbeumo goes to AFCON, will Cunha suddenly become an amazing option game week 17? Probably not. I think if you want Man City players, it's probably right now. Chelsea I've spoken about already with Cole Palmer. Like, it's 2 away games in the next 3, Bournemouth and Newcastle. Okay, then they've got Villa, Bournemouth at home, 18 up, but then it's Man City away. Like, there's no amazing fixture swing there until game week 22 later on. You know, Arsenal are pretty good right now. Villa away, Wolves at home. Then their fixtures get slightly worse. Like, what other, like Liverpool? I mean, come on, you're not going to wildcard for 3 Liverpool players anytime soon. There is just no perfect week. And I hate saying that because I want to say to you, just save your wildcard for game week 18. It's so obvious. There's so many fixture swings, AFCON, but it's not the case. It just isn't. So yeah, again, it's one of those things. Both can work. My gut instinct is you use it in 16. That's better than waiting until 19. But it might not be. Simple as that. So I'm just going to go through some final thoughts for my own team ahead of tomorrow's deadline. I got nothing in the bank and only 1 free transfer. But obviously we get topped up to 5 free transfers next week. So I really want to make use of my final move. The short summary is I'm probably going to do Mateta to Thiago. That move is not 100% locked in. I might change my mind by the time we get to the deadline tomorrow. But I'm fairly certain that is the move I will end up doing. And I kind of wish I'd done it last night. Because 1, I'd have nothing to think about now. And 2, I would have got the price rise on Thiago. But I just couldn't do it because I wasn't 100% sure. And you never know what press conferences might throw up. As it stands, there is no injury news that really concerns me. But I still think it was the right decision to wait. So that's the short summary. There'll be nothing else left in this video now apart from a long ramble about why that will probably be my move. So if you want to listen to that, great. If not, I'll see you on the deadline stream tomorrow. So this is how I'm set up. Raya and Timber double up against Villa away. I don't know if there's that high a chance of a clean sheet in a game like that, but if any team can go to Villa and get a clean sheet, it's Arsenal. But obviously they do have injury problems. Saliba might not be available. It could be Ben White right back, Timber centre back. It's not an ideal situation, but I've got to play Timber. I don't see playing Anderson as a better option this week. And Ray is my gut. Like, it's not like Dubravka's better. So that's fairly straightforward. I'm playing Lacroix over Anderson, primarily because I got Mateta. Now, I do think this season, because of defensive contributions, attackers playing defenders is not so bad. But I quite like Lacroix anyway, so that's why he's in the team. If I sell Mateta, I suspect I'll put Anderson in instead. And then it'll be the decision, do I play Lacroix or Dewsbury Hall? And again, that's quite close, because Lacroix is great for defensive contributions. He's got good goal threat as well. And Dewsbury Hall is probably going to be playing in a deeper role for Everton. I don't think he'll be playing number 10 at the moment with the injuries and suspensions and stuff they've got. So it does put me off him a little bit more than it usually would, but not enough to be in a panic about it. If I've got to play Dewsbury Hall against Forest home, it's fine. So if Mateta gets sold, Anderson probably comes in. Then it's whether Lacroix plays or Dewsbury Hall. And then Van Dijk against Leeds away. That guy kind of is like super annoying, but kind of I still think an okay pick over Christmas. So unless I'm desperate for the money, I'm just going to keep hold of him. Like, Leeds obviously did really well against Chelsea. My hope is they're too knackered to do the same against Liverpool. We'll have to wait and see. And then after that game, it's 3 home matches in the next 4. Brighton, Wolves, Leeds. I think it's okay. So Van Dijk probably stays. He's going to play every minute over Christmas. Goal threat, DEFCONs, etc. All the stuff you've heard me say before. He's certainly not going to get sold this week. I did say this is going to go off onto a bit of a ramble. I do already, like, my plan the whole way through has been to use as few of the 5 free transfers as possible. Just try and use 1 a week, maybe 2 if I absolutely need to keep them rolled for ages. I can already see me being through all of them after 3 or 4 game weeks. Like, the temptation to sell Van Dijk as part of a multi-transfer move to spread money somewhere else it will just become an increased thing I want to do as soon as I see those 5 moves. So we'll see. I'm happy to hold him. I'm not completely... I just think it'll be difficult to sell him every week. Because it's not going to be this week I do it. I'm going to get to Brighton. Okay, well, that's at home. I don't really want to do it. Okay, Spurs away is not great, but then it's Wolves at home, Leeds at home. I've come this far. I might as well keep him for a couple more. So I suspect he'll stay. Minte, disappointing against Villa. It's West Ham at home. Fine with that. He should start. Saka will definitely start as well. So will Fernandes. Cunha, I already feel like I've made a mistake. Kind of. I don't want to knee-jerk massively, but I cannot help but think, or put it a different way, I cannot stop thinking about that game week 12 move. I mean, it's not the only thing I'm thinking about, but it does keep creeping back into my mind. If I'd gone Minte, I'd be sat in game week 14 with Semenyo. I probably would have rolled. I'd be sat here with 2 free transfers, and I'd be buying Foden for free. Whereas now I can't afford that. I've got Cunha, and honestly, I'm not even sure if he starts against Wolves. Like, buying him this week, if you're thinking about it, is a massive risk. Like, Mbeumo will definitely start. You've got 2 more spots for Cunha, Mount, and Xerxes. Mount didn't play many minutes midweek, probably because he played 90 the week before. Oh, sorry, the game before. I think Mount comes back in, and I don't think it's a certainty that Cunha plays up front. So this will all depend on Mount's fitness and what Amorim wants to do up front. But Xerxes, I mean, he's done okay by Man United standards. He's not done okay by most of the rest of the league, but he's done all right. So I don't think Cunha's guaranteed to start, but I'm not confident in that shout enough to sell him. And even if I sell him, I can't afford Foden. I'm not going to take a hit when we got 5 free transfers. So I almost feel stuck with Cunha while everyone else is buying Foden, and I'm worried about it. I do think maybe I've made a mistake. And that's part of the reason I like the Mateta to Thiago move, because it frees up about 1 million, and that gives me the money to do Cunha to Foden at any point I want to do that. And ultimately, the reason why I've come around to that move... So originally I was thinking about doing Senesi to Vandenberg, which I don't hate still, right? Because Senesi's on my bench this week. Vandenberg can just be benched as well. And then it's Leeds at home, Wolves away, Bournemouth at home. So it's not a bad 3 game weeks if I have to pay him. He's only 4.5 million. It puts a player in for the next few weeks without having to sell anyone else. And obviously I get to 5 transfers next week. But I just think next week I'm going to see Mateta against Man City at home, and I'm going to see Thiago against Leeds at home, who's almost certainly a guaranteed price rise before game week 16. I don't think he'll go up twice, but I think he'll go up at least once. And then he's got Wolves away, and he's cheaper, so he's a more valuable player. I just feel like I'm going to want to make that move. And so if I do the Senesi one first, it's almost delaying the inevitable. So Mateta to Thiago, which again is really difficult to say when you say it quickly, to Thiago, you've got to say it a bit slower. It almost saves a transfer next week. Because I'm like, if I get to next week and I've got Senesi, I'm not necessarily in like a mad rush to sell him. Okay, it's Man United away, but after that it's Burnley at home. So I could just keep him for that game and then sell him. Or if I get to next week and I want to keep Cunha and get Foden in 17 instead, I can make the Senesi move. So does that make sense? Right? If I do Senesi this week, I'm almost certainly going to make the Mateta move next week. Whereas if I do Mateta this week, I'm not definitely going to do the Senesi move next week. So it might save myself a transfer by just doing the Thiago one this week. And if I get to next week with 5 and only want to make 1 move, like a 1-week punt on Minte or something, I can go to Dangu Utara. I just think overall, Mateta to Thiago will give me more options longer term because of the money it puts in the bank. Only 1 million now because Thiago's gone up in price about 5 times in the last week. So 1 million just gives me more options. If I want to do Cunha to Foden, I've got lots of money to play with because I've got 8.9 to spend on that spot. And if I don't, by the way, that's fine. I still think having Thiago over Mateta is not terrible for these few weeks. But it goes back to the Palace question earlier. I'm not completely convinced about the fatigue, tiredness, but Nketiah is a problem. So I think I'm going to make that move, and then I've got him in place, and then it's just about when I get Foden in. I don't even think it's if, I think it's when. And I can either do Cunha to Foden, or maybe I sell Saka after the Wolves game. So potentially Thiago comes in this week, Minte next week when he's got Liverpool. Maybe he goes to like Dangu Utara 1-week punt, and I've still got 5 free transfers in 17. And then maybe in 17, I get Foden in for Saka, frees up loads of money, 3 million. Maybe by that point, I've decided to keep Cunha, and I do Utara back to, instead of going back to Minte, maybe I go to Semenyo, who's got Burnley at home in 17. And I can play him against Brentford away, then decide what to do. And maybe I sell him in 19 for a different midfielder. So that would still leave me 1.3 in the bank. And then I've got a midfield of Cunha, Fernandes, Semenyo, Foden with Dewsbury Hall to play when needed. And maybe I spend that, maybe I keep Senesi for game week 17, Burnley at home. Maybe then I sell him in 18. And in 18, that's when Everton's fixtures get quite good. So Burnley away, Forest away, Brentford at home, Wolves at home, Villa away, Leeds at home. It's not a bad run. Maybe Senesi to Tarkowski. And maybe I go back to a few weeks ago when mostly I'm playing 4 at the back and Dewsbury Hall's mostly on the bench. I don't know. I just think the Thiago move leaves me more options than doing the Senesi move, essentially. And with Cunha, just to come back to him, I do think once we get to game week 17, he's going to be fine for minutes. He has to be, because Ahmad and Mbeumo are going to AFCON. I mean, Šeško will be back, but I can't imagine it's going to be Šeško, Xerxes and Mount playing regularly. So Cunha will probably be in the team almost every week over Christmas, and the fixtures are good for Man United. Like Wolves at home in 19, Leeds away 20, Burnley away in 21. So I don't think he's completely terrible as a pick, but I do think the minutes for 15, 16, he probably starts at least 1, but I cannot guarantee 2. And it's Foden is killing me, honestly. I hate this because I think for most of the season, I've been quite calm about players that are scoring that I don't own. But 4 goals in 2 games, it plays on your mind. And everybody is buying him. His price is going up. His ownership's going up. It's really difficult to go against. And watching that game last night, Man United against West Ham, zero confidence Cunha can get anywhere near Foden in terms of points the next few weeks. And obviously Foden's not going to keep scoring 2 a game. And Cunha's better than what we've seen so far. But he's not been great for Man United. Simple as that. So I don't know how much to panic about him. But that Thiago move leaves me options to then go Cunha to Foden if I want to. So I think that's the move I've got to make. I mean, African Cup of Nations transfers are already giving me a headache, because if this was a normal game week, I would absolutely roll. 100% I would roll this team. It's like back in game week 12, where I said I would roll if it wasn't for the 5 transfers. Instead, I bought Cunha. I would definitely roll this team. No question whatsoever. But we've got one move to make. And I could burn it, but I don't think my team 16 onwards is good enough to really warrant that. So, yeah, for the first time this season, I feel like a bit undecided, I'm not quite sure what to do. But if I sit back and look at it, like if someone showed me that team and it wasn't mine, I'd be like, it's a pretty good team. Yeah, you haven't got Foden, but maybe it's okay for 1 week, or maybe it's okay for next week as well, and then you can just reassess. Like, I've got Haaland captain. That's the one that could do the most damage if I didn't own. I've just got to hope that Foden only scores 1 goal this week, and maybe Cunha can just flick off his knee and go in or something against Wolves. I mean, if he starts, I'm hopefully he'll score against Wolves. Old club and all that. But anyway, I'm rambling for a long time. Mateta to Thiago is probably going to happen. If you can think of a better move for my team, go for it. I mean, I could do Mateta to Voltemar, the 1 week punt, then to Thiago, but I'm just using extra transfers. I don't want to do that. Blah, blah, blah. Thanks for watching. Give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you at 9 a.m. UK time on Saturday morning for the deadline stream. Goodbye.